it kind of dawned on me the other day that learning about self-organising systems was actually a bit like learning a new language. You know, you can't learn it just in a 1 hour session. You know, it's not really like that. It's something that you've got to learn the basics of, and then you learn the syntax of, and then you learn the grammar of, and gradually you acquire fluency in it. So hopefully today is going to be kind of part of that journey for you. So I'll just say a little bit about the background and the history of self-organising systems. So before last year, in October or before that, after the first set of rebellions, the way that XR was organised was there was about 12 to 15 coordinators, key coordinators, and they had massive briefs. And pretty much what ended up happening is that they ended up being in meetings almost 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. You know, that was just how it was, because there was just so much underneath each sort of portfolio, as it were. And as XR just grew exponentially, there began to be this feeling of this is just unsustainable. How can we do this? And if we want to grow regionally, if we want to grow internationally, how is this going to work? And there was kind of a moment, a hiatus moment, where they just took this really drastic action to just dissolve completely dissolve that coordinators group. They're just we are just dissolved. We're now declaring ourselves dissolved, and it's decentralized or die. Yeah. So then there was this massive sort of vacuum as to, okay, well, if that's not going to happen, what is going to happen? And what gradually emerged was different proposals and different people who'd had different kinds of experience about how do we organize at scale something like this, which has never been done before in many, many ways. And a couple of people, myself, Nick Osborne, a couple of other people, had these ideas of different ways of organizations being organized. And part of it was there's a whole kind of a flow of sort of ideas about how organizations have evolved over time. And on this bit of paper, which you can come and have a look at different times, there's these different ideas about the red organizations, which are kind of basically based on power, fear, and chaos. Gangs, mafia, militia, that's kind of a very old and kind of tried and tested way of organising groups of people. And then there is the next level, kind of yellow level, which is about hierarchy, long-term vision, stability, and the kind of evolution of governments, public schools, traditional churches, kind of quite hierarchical, that kind of thing. And then gradually what then has evolved is, the whole way that large corporations operate, based on profit, based on competition, based on innovation. So that's another kind of layer of how organizations have developed. And then there is the green layer, which is now trying to be nice organizations, where we have equal opportunity policies, and we have empowerment, and we want our culture to be right for our organization, and we have stakeholder balance, and we have empowerment, all of these sorts of things. And kind of looking around the room, I'm kind of imagining that quite a few of us probably work within those sorts of organizations, so NGOs, public sector organizations like that. And then the most recently evolved kind of organisation is considered to be a teal organisation. This is all encapsulated in a book by Frederic Laloux that some of you may have come across, called Reinventing Organisations. So in the teal organising system, you've got something called distributed decision making that's based on a higher purpose, it's based on wholeness, self-organising, and an evolutionary purpose. And quite a few of us have kind of come across that, read that, been involved in organisations trying that out. And so we thought that let's see if we can begin to harness that particular thinking about organisations and use it for Extinction Rebellion. So our self-organising system is an evolving adaptation of several teal-based organising frameworks. And the kind of, if you want to know more about that, there's a book about that thick by Frederic Laloux called Reinventing Organisations, and it's a very good read, I hear. I've only just skimmed it. And these images are from that book, taken from that book.
Could you repeat the name of the author?
Frederic Laloux, and he's got a very good 20-minute, hour and 20 minutes, YouTube it. There's loads of information out there. In fact, my claim to fame is that he actually now supporting us within a self-organising system, because it's, he says, like, this is the biggest experiment in self-organising that there's ever been on the planet. And it's quite extraordinary, because up until now it's only ever been done within organisations that have, paid workers and all this. So to actually try to roll it out on this scale is got his interest. And one of the key things about those organisations, teal organisations, is that the framework, one aspect of one of those organisations is holocracy. And within that model, there's something called the Constitution. And I don't know, how many of you knows that XR has got a Constitution? Any of you know, how many of you know? Ah, great, quite a few. But that's one of the key things, that the power is held really within a system and within a constitution. So that's one of the things we'll be thinking about. So it's a system that's very new, and what we up until now have been very familiar with on the whole is hierarchical organisations or consensus-based organisations, and those can be formal or informal. And what we're looking at is literally evolving something that's neither those, but has elements of both of them. But it's not exactly a mashup of both either. But it is something that in a lot of ways is quite counterintuitive, because how we've been schooled and the paradigms and where we come from tends to be based in those old models. So in order to really kind of change that, it does take quite a bit of work and quite a bit of thinking through. And what we've just recently identified is that there's a kind of foundation level of kind of knowing the basic context of what a self-organising organisation expects and needs from us and how to do it. There's kind of foundation level. Then there's operation level, where it's if you actually want to be involved in a national working group, if you want to develop your own national working group, if you want your local group to develop a self-organising system. There are, so far we've kind of identified about 10 core competencies that you kind of need to develop if you really want to get on board with that. And once you've got to know what those 10 competencies are, and once you've practiced them, then we would say you're beginning to be fluent in self-organising systems. And eventually you could even start to be able to coach and teach and support others to develop them. And I have to say that I'm a trainer and consultant by profession, and since learning more and more about this, it just feels like this is a missing piece in how we can create change, because often groups get together and they have great ideas. I go into organisations or NGOs and we talk about what's working, we talk about what's not working, and people are really honest and they feel really connected and really bonded, and they go away with like 9 rolls of flip chart, all the good things they want to do. And as I walk out the door, I've got this faint sort of sinking feeling like, what's actually going to happen to all of that? Because you get a group of people, how do you start with a whole list of all these things that are really good, that how we want things to change and what we want to do? And since really understanding and developing this for myself, I feel like I'm able to teach and train and leave people with a much more coherent and clear way for them to self-organize to create change within their organizations. And I've been using it in all kinds of organizations, nothing to do with Extinction Rebellion, even though that's where I've come in. And I found that it really makes a huge difference. So even if it makes life within a lot of us working within Extinction Rebellion sometimes, and me particularly, I was like, why don't we just do it the hierarchical way? It would be so much simpler, so much less work, and so much more efficient. There's a real big part of me that's thought that for ages. But for a start, people who would have been in the position to do that actually just didn't want to do it for the most part. Of just like, no, we just can't. So that was one reason why not to do it. But another reason that's really interesting is that actually it's teaching us all skills, and everybody who comes in contact with it, it's prefiguring. If we want to set up a local food co-op or there's so many things that we can set up in prefiguring what we need to happen as we move through the climate crisis, that is going to need a different way of organizing. And it's okay, self-organizing system is the most natural, intuitive for about 5 to 7 people. That is how most fantastic, effective, successful businesses run. They wake up in the morning, they go, you get the pancakes, you sort out the so-and-so, blah, 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 you do this, and we'll meet back at lunchtime, we'll see what else needs to be done. It's just very simple when it's a small scale thing. But if you're thinking thousands of people and the kind of scale and the kind of things that need to happen in order for us to do that very intuitive thing, it takes a lot of structure, actually, and it takes a lot of learning. So that's what we're here to do today. So today, we're just going to really cover the first layer, the foundational aspect of self-organizing systems. And we have got, that's why we got your email numbers, we've got loads of materials, videos, all kinds of things. If you're looking to want to use SOS at a more operational level, there's lots of resources that we have, and we also will eventually develop more in-person trainings for the operational style. And hopefully, in fact, when I was talking to Frederic Lelou about this, he said, oh yes, I think you should have coloured badges. Everybody who's done this gets one coloured badge, and then if you're here, you have different coloured badge, and when you're here, so then when you talk to each other, you know where each other is, and you can, I don't know, you can have conferences where people work at different levels. It was quite funny, but it's kind of like just kind of giving you that sense of that actually there is a lot of different levels that you can go to this too. What we come in with is quite a lot of experience of sort of more of a triangular shaped organisation with someone, a headmaster or a CEO or a leader at the top, middle managers, and the detailed instruction given to the people at the bottom of the organisation. But there are ways in which this can be, people have lots of positive experiences, and there's a lot of clarity, there's a lot of things about it that actually also do work. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use a metaphor to explore a self-organising system. So here, how it's thought in a way is that organisation is a bit like a machine. So if you've got the right person at the top, they can make things happen right the way down, and they are in charge of making what gets produced happen. So in a way, if an organisation works well, the credit goes to the leader. If it doesn't work well, the discredit goes to the leader as well. So they seem to be making what's happening down here happen. Worked in a hierarchy where it didn't work. Anyone in an experience of working in a hierarchy, we're not. Because you can see from the amount of people that were in a hierarchical went in where hierarchy wasn't positive. That, you know, we're all slightly traumatized, we've all got slight trauma, and some people probably don't, about that system. But even just as a child, we're in a hierarchical system where we're told what to do often, and that can be quite painful. So in a way, what sometimes happens is like let's swing the pendulum to the other extreme, and let's everybody have a say about everything, right? So that can have huge upsides and experiences where that's really positive, and it can also have downsides. You know, everyone coming into Extinction Rebellion will have echoes and imprints of these paradigms. You know, the hierarchical paradigm where you are led, and in some ways that can be really wonderful, and in some ways that can be really harmful, and experiences of times where you've had your say and everyone's voice counts, and that can be helpful and that can be unhelpful. One of the most useful things anybody's ever said to me is that every paradigm, because these are all paradigms, aren't they, ways of doing things, reveals certain things and conceals certain things. And that is probably the most helpful thing I've ever heard about anything. Because, you know, we are creating a paradigm. Self-organising system is a paradigm. It's a different one that we're used to, and it will empower and reveal certain things, but it will also conceal things. You know, there will be people stepping in and saying wonderful experiences of self-organising system, and also people stepping in and saying really unhelpful experiences of self-organising systems. But in the particular time and place that we are at, with the emergency, with the need to decentralise, with all of the different factors that are in this particular moment, what's been chosen is the paradigm of self-organising. And to begin to distinguish that, and to know that in every group we're going to be carrying the echoes of wanting our voice to be heard the same as everybody else, and wanting to be able to lead in a powerful way. And I think that the awareness of that and stepping into that within a self-organising system is really important to bring that awareness in to what we're doing. So one of the key things in the foundation is being aware, consensus, hierarchy. These are the two things that we're going to be swinging between. And then there's this new thing that we're trying to understand, we're trying to evolve, we're trying to experiment with, we're trying to make work for ourselves and for the planet. And that's the job, that's the dance, that's the job that we're in this self-organising system. So what we're going to do now is it's an exercise where we're going to try to model a self-organising system. Yeah. And what it's going to take is I need someone to be Rebellia. Who would like to be Rebellia? Who'd like to be Rebellia?
It has to be a man with that name.
Can be a man or a woman, anyone?
I'll be a
You're
I don't know
Rebellia.
what
Okay. And you've got some family,
Okay.
right? So who'd like to be some of Rebellia's family? We need about 3 people to be part of her family. Okay, who'd like to? Yep. So come and be part of Rebellia's family. Rebellia's family. Okay. Here we've got. This is the Rebellia family. Okay. And they've decided that they want to put on a party, an all-day party for Extinction Rebellion, to be a fundraiser. Okay. And they have decided that they're going to ask other people if they want to be part of putting on this party that they have decided. Now they've brought their heads together. So bring your heads together. They brought their heads together, and they've decided that what they want for their party is two things. They want it to have a Mexican theme, and they want everyone to wear green at the party. And in fact, that's the colour theme, green. And apart from that, that's their only real requirement. There needs to be food, there needs to be entertainment, and there needs to be a venue. Yeah. Okay, so they've got something that they've established. They've got established certain criteria. And what they want to do now is they want to invite who else wants to be part of supporting this to happen. Who wants to be on the organising team to support this to happen? So who'd like to be part of that?
But what you don't know, doesn't that have to happen in an organic way? I'm just curious what.
So we're just saying, we're just opening it up. Who wants to play? Okay. This is the theme. We want a party. It's going to be Mexican and it can be green. Who wants to play in us creating a fundraiser for XR with that criteria? So can you see already it is already defined. There is already definition there, but there is then an invitation. Who wants to be part of this? Who wants to play? So who wants to play?
Sure.
Yeah? Okay. So if you come up, anyone who wants to play, come up here. So there's two roles. There's the roles of the players involved. We need more players. And there's going to be roles for observers in observing what's going to happen. So who else needs to, who wants to play in this? Anyone else? Let's get a few more people. Thank you.
It's boring, it's not.
I'm not going to play.
Who's boring?
We have learned.
Okay. So, what we'd like you to do is to form 3 teams. A team that's devoted to food, a team that's devoted to venue, and a team that's devoted to entertainment. I want another group over here.
Okay, here we go.
And you have the final group here.
Yeah.
Okay, so make yourselves a circle. And where are you?
I was thinking, because I'm Rebellia, I might be, I don't know whether I'm going to go into a group or not, because I might be responsible for it all happening, so I might go around. But is that self-organising or not?
Right. There we have it. There we have the model. Okay. That's the hierarchical model, in a sense. It's like, well, it's my party, so therefore I'm going to hover and I'm going to make sure it all happens my way. But actually what you've done is you said, all I want is for there to be food, venue, and entertainment. So you get to join whichever team you want to join.
Okay.
Yeah. Send one person from each group, and we will listen to their discussion. That was interesting, that little thing that happened there. What just happened there? Yeah. But can you see how
Slightly suspicious of each other.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, what is it I can't get from here?
We were all good. And now I've got to go over here and it's like, hello. Fascinating.
Entertainment.
Food.
That has a kitchen, first of all.
So refrigeration might be an issue.
Well, we were actually wondering if the
I guess the kind of thing that we wanted to know.
So, what we witnessed there was an embryonic self-organising system. So, self-organising system distributes authority. So, the outermost circle holds the purpose and intention of the whole organism. Yeah. So it starts off with a particular group of people that want to play a particular game and set up the rules of that game. Yeah. You set up the rules, green, Mexican. But then, divide it up. In order to make the party happen, we have to divide up the roles, the accountabilities to make it happen. And could you see that within one group, you might divide it up into drinks and food, and then you might divide up into something, so you can get more and more smaller groups forming. But within each outermost group, you then would send a representation to the next circle out. So each group then sends someone to that group to decide what's needed, and that group sends it to that group sends someone to that group. And this group isn't, this is the most common misunderstanding, is that the outermost group, called the anchor circle, is not like a management board, because the decisions have actually already been distributed. The decision making for those areas have been distributed. And there's a horrible moment in self-organising systems when you go, oh shit. They actually can decide on, we're going to have all vegetarian burritos. What do you mean? But that isn't a burrito. That's not right. I should be able to challenge that.
Yeah.
But in this system, you have delegated that responsibility. You've distributed it to that team. And, you know, as well as distributing authority, that needs to go hand in hand with certain accountabilities that you take on. So within values, within the 3 demands. So what did you notice? Anything that you noticed there that's kind of like takes us into trying to sort of get the measure of this landscape? New teams can form, teams that aren't necessary can dissolve.
From inside, I've noticed that there was a fear of being a leader, like fear of dominating. Even if you had a lot to share, I was like, ooh, you know, don't push, don't listen, don't, you know. And inside I felt like conflicted because I wanted, and maybe I would have exhausted it pretty soon. But I was so scared, and I'm saying scared rather than cautious, to over push.
Yeah.
It wasn't
So
very
what would have helped? And this is one of the keys to self-organising systems. Within your small groups, what would have been a useful conversation to have? So you start beginning to think about what are the structures that would help the communication to happen. And that's a vital bit of a self-organising system. So in order for us to do what we said we would do, what are the different roles that we would need to have within this small group? You know, can someone think about the money? Can someone think about the shopping? Can someone think about, so what are the roles that are needed? And what people tend to do is jump into action first without actually trying to define quite clearly what are the roles that are needed here and who here would be willing to take on those roles. And there may be certain roles that there aren't enough people for, or not anyone with that skill set. You know, is anyone here able to cook in the cooking team? You know, or is that role of cooks, is that one that we need to define and then have a shout out? Because it may be that there's some people in some other teams that are cooks but aren't in that team. So the need for really clear communication methods and really clear definition of roles, and within that circle, then you begin to get the distribution of decision making within a small group into roles. So it could be that someone has an ability, there's a role called strategic overview. Would it be okay with you I can see things from a big distance. There's a role called strategic overview, and I'm going to be the one to do X, Y, and Z. So then you're not in that mix of, am I pushing too hard? I'm scared to be a leader. You can lead as if that's what is needed for that to happen, and you've identified that role. So the more clearly you can identify your communication systems, the more clearly you can identify the roles needed to deliver that particular task that you've been given, the more you're then able to talk to each other within that group from your role. And you've been given that authority by that group. And again, there will be that moment of, oh shit. I didn't want them to do that. So this is where now the Constitution, reading the Constitution, may begin to make a bit more sense. Okay. The key roles, there's what we call template roles, and then there's working group specific roles. So the template roles that we've got, which we think, in order to maximise really good communication within any group, every meeting needs a facilitator that knows their facilitation themes, right? Yeah? That they can hold the space, that they can hold the timeline, that they know about how we're going to work through things. So this facilitator of meetings is a key facilitator here, is a key role, what we call a template role. Holds meetings on track with the agenda and structures decision-making processes. Can be appointed at the start of every meeting or volunteers to be elected for a specific period of time. So this is one of the template roles. We think in order to facilitate a good group, we need to have a facilitator, we need to have a secretary, someone who records action points and project updates, shares it with everyone in the meeting, captures and publishes the outputs from that circle, interprets governance and mandates upon requests, schedules the circle's required meetings. Now, often within a group, you'll have like a team leader. They will do the facilitation. They will make sure that try to get the meetings to happen, and they will have the external coordinator role. So there's often when one person steps into it, they're actually doing three jobs, which concentrates the power in them and makes it. If they don't do something, if they're not good at scheduling meetings, then the meetings just don't happen. And no one else can kind of say, hang on a minute, why aren't the meetings happening? But if you separate them out, one person's making sure the meeting's happening, another person's making sure the meeting's happening really well, and this person has a different set of responsibilities. So the external coordinator, their job is to represent the team in the wider circle. So the anchor circle, or the wider circle, when each group sends someone so that they can discuss what's needed to discuss between them, to work out the numbers, the venue, the size, how's that going to work together. So they represent the team in the wider circle, of which it is a part, to resolve issues which can't be resolved in this team. Did you get that there's some issues as a small team you just couldn't resolve? You had to go somewhere else to resolve those, because you didn't have the information. Yeah? They find a replacement to represent the team in the wider circle in the meeting if they can't attend, so they find somebody else to attend, and they manage information flow between their team and the other team. They manage that information flow. So anyone in the team, and again you'll go back to the Constitution, and anyone in the team can propose that the coordinator is re-elected, a re-election. So you're not stuck with your coordinator. If you want to change your coordinator, anyone in any meeting can propose a new coordinator. So what we've identified is the two key things that are needed are very good internal communication processes. In the constitution is written how meetings, how project boards, Google Docs, because one of the things that in order for us to trust each other, which is one of the issues that you were bringing up, we want radical transparency. So that every meeting, their minutes can be accessed by every other group. So you probably don't know this, but you can actually look at the meetings of the Self Organising System team anytime you want to look at them. I think that's right. This particular model is kind of by adoption only. So the National UK XR Working Group has agreed to use this model, but we can't impose this model on every local group. So every local group, and also, I mean, we've been supporting and coaching people from all over Germany and New York and Australia and all the other places, because every group at a certain point goes into how are we going to organise ourselves and how are we going to decide and who decides how to decide. And there is a horrible, sticky 2-month period where it's like, it's just horrible, where you're trying to work out how are we going to do this. And that's where a lot of the chaos and the kind of, trying to get your head around it. But at a certain point, something happens and somebody goes, let's us, even if it's just the 4 of us, let's just decide this is how we want to work. And then if someone wants to join, they join into this. So every local group at some point, if they want to take up this system, needs to adopt it. So it's not something, it just has to be adopted by different groups. But if it does, I can see, so as you can see, as well as the 3 key template roles, there's a role of, say, international link over there. So we've now got quite a number of different countries that have adopted this model, and they will also have an international link, and there will be a group of people linking up as all the international people who work within the SOS system. And similar the region, and similar. So there is the potential to become to have the anchor circles of the different countries and the different regions all send somebody to a kind of overall. At the moment we're just working at, we kind of tried to work at the UK level, now we're looking at an international level, but there'll also be a regional level. But all of this is just going to be built slowly by slowly, piece by piece, group by group, choosing this way to work. Because this way to work it's not easy, but in my experience, what it does is it means that we all have got to learn a new language. People are coming in from Extinction Rebellion from so many different paradigms: political, economic, social, spiritual. Everyone's coming in with their own kind of worldview of how to do things. By committing to a constitution, by committing to work along these roles, then it's like we all are committing to learning a new language and getting it wrong a lot of the time, but working to build something together. But it can only be done from that adoption point of view. And that's quite hard to get across to people. How does a self-organising system work? Well, people just adopt it if they want to within a group. The internal coordinator's job to add new roles, change existing roles, and updating them, inviting new members to join the team, adding new members to any communication platforms, keeping a list of team members up to date so it's clear who is in the team and who isn't. And the most difficult one, which a friend of mine suddenly went, thanks a lot, I just saw in the small print it was my job as well as someone to leave. Didn't realise that the internal coordinator's job is to ask people to leave. Listen to feedback from team members and ask people to leave the team if they are not properly fulfilling their roles and mandates, they're not doing any work in the team, they're repeatedly violating XR's principles and values, the rebellion's aims or its constitution, or they're refusing to participate in the XR conflict resilience process. Representing the team in the wider circle, if the external coordinator can't, it's designed to keep, to never stop and never, it's you know, and that's what will drive us crazy, because we think, if only we could just get it sorted, and then and it will be fine. You know, that's the part of us that really wants that. And this isn't that. The Constitution is constantly being added to. Oh, a new policy, we need that. Oh, we need this. Oh, let's take that out. It's a constant development.
How do those decisions get made then?
We've been the SOS team. That's our mandate.
Right.
So if there's an issue and there's a policy that needs to be brought in, then there is the anchor circle. That's where if you want to really change a mandate for something, or you want to say, you know, change the freedom arms or something like that, you have to take the proposal to the anchor circle. Because the anchor circle, Rebellia, is in charge of holding the purpose. You know, Rebellia decided we want green, we want Mexican. And so this is something that we haven't talked about. This is the other element of this process, is that even the decision making has been distributed, but part of what we take on when we take on this process is that we seek advice from others. So before making a big decision, you would seek advice from anyone who's got more expertise in this area, or anyone who's going to be impacted by this decision. That doesn't mean that everyone's views are taken on board. Like, just because you said you didn't like it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. But your job is to listen to what everybody is saying, and then taking on board all of that when you've been given the authority, you've been given the mandate to make a certain decision. And people can influence that, obviously. If there's a huge amount of people saying one thing or another, that is going to have an effect. But that doesn't, you know, that person still has been given authority to make that decision. And that's the oh shit moment. From here, which is what the remit of this training is, into here. Yeah? He's moving us into the operationalizing. How do we operationalize these things? And in order to operationalize this, we've come up with there's 10 core competencies that you would need to learn and practice, like putting forward a proposal. It's a kind of, you know, you have to do your homework on how to do it and how to get advice and then how to move it on. So it's you know, you have to get to the next level of understanding in order to really participate more fully, really.
So there is a hierarchy.
There is a hierarchy, and it's a hierarchy of purpose, not a hierarchy of power. There's rules to how this works. So, you know, within all self-organising systems, so the body is a self-organising system, bees are a self-organising system, the traffic is a self-organising, there's all kinds of self-organising systems. So this is only the second time we've ever trained SOS in person, right? Mm-hmm. I did it about a month ago in Bristol for 70 people. This is only the second time we've ever done this. And so we haven't even devised this level of training to do in purpose. We know that it needs to exist, but we haven't actually devised it yet. And the fluency will come from practicing the core competencies. So if you are interested in what we've seen is really needed, is like, in order to get this really embedded within the system, we need facilitators, secretaries, and internal coordinators for each group. And there are currently quite a few groups that are operating without them. You don't even, realise that they're operating without them. Yeah. So, we want to get as many people trained up, and then going into groups. Maybe it's not a group that you necessarily even that interested in as what they're doing, but you would love to help to administer the circle along the SOS lines, and you'd be willing to put some time in to administer and support circles to be like that. If anyone's interested, at the moment I'm trying to onboard as many people to give to other circles, and you're in the top 0.0% because not hardly anyone's actually done this training. We've had the Constitution for ages, we've had lots of videos that people read, but I think there's something different happens in our collective understanding when we actually do this in person.